Welcome everybody to another episode of Let's Talk series. And this is our part two of part one of Beyond the Paycheck, coping with provider pressure and protecting your mental health. So if you remember the last one, we focused on men's mental health, in particular to the pressure around being a provider and how that pressure actually is a huge mental health difficulty, relational and emotional health difficulty for men in general. And we specifically focus on Black men in general as well. So Neil and Joseph were our associate limited license marriage and family therapy at Ibisami Relational Health talked a great deal about that in terms of their own clinical experiences as well as their lived experiences and actually dealing with this provider pressure and in the work that they are doing with the Black men that they see in therapy. So last time, if you remembered, we were like, we need more time to talk about this. There's a lot to talk about. So in there, we said, okay, we'll do a part two. So this is the part two of it. And I'm sure we're not going to get through everything as well. There's probably going to be several other more to talk about, but we're going to try to wrap it up in this part two. And maybe we'll have other stuff that we want to do that is connected to just Black Black men's mental health and men in general, their mental health as well. I don't know if Neil and Joseph, you have anything to add from what I said.
I do not. That sounded very good.
Okay.
Right. I concur.
Awesome, awesome. Well, so let's dive quick into our part two. So I have a question for the two of you. So continuing the conversation we started the last time. This time around, I want you to please talk to us a bit about how does this provider pressure affects the quality of a father's relationship, right? Like, I think last time we talked a bit about just the partnership, right, between men and women and the pressure that this provider pressure puts on men and their relationship with the partner in their life, right? Particularly if it's a heterosexual relationship, the female partner in their life. Can you all talk a little bit about how this provider pressure also affects just the role of being a father and the men's relationship too, right? Their children, their child, and even to themselves as a father.
Okay. Well, I think, especially in my experience, especially with people from different cultures, the the father's relationship to the children as a provider can be just that, and that is how they show their love, which is I put a roof over your head, I put food in your belly, and that is how I show my love as your father. Um, I see a trend nowadays for people to expect, want, and desire more nurturing relationships. So more emotional involvement with the children as opposed to just being the provider. So I see a shift in demands and expectations and even the definition of what it means to be a provider. Now it's not just your material needs or your shelter. It's more emotional stability, emotional support.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you.
Right. Just to piggyback off that, what Neil was saying, in my experience, there's this sense with a lot of the males that I've seen where it's like their role is just the provider and that's it. Anything else, again, is just it doesn't exist in a sense. Like you can provide that love, that care, that support, but very minimal. But then you got to go back to being that provider because that's what defines me as a man. That's what it means to be a man. Anything other than that makes me less of a man, right? And what we see, or what I've seen in, the young adults that I've also worked with, is that lack of that relationship that they have with their father, where they want more from their father. But then even for them, to step into that role, it makes me less of a man to ask that of my father.
Mm, okay. To even ask their dad for that connection, emotional connection, relational connection, they feel like they're less of a man, that they want that emotional, they're requesting that emotional connection from their own dad.
Right, right.
That's deep. I appreciate you talking about that, because as we've seen changes even in the functionality of what marriage is, right? Like why people get married, right? Before, people used to get married in order to like fulfill their financial needs, right? It's kind of like a give and take, right? You give me love, I provide housing
Mhm.
for you, right? But over time, generationally, we've seen a change to that. People are actually being in relationship, getting married because they want emotional partner, right? They want emotional companion. And you are saying that the same thing, if we're thinking about parallel process, the same thing is happening with the role of a father, right? That it's not just about providing financially, it's also providing emotionally, providing in terms of like relational connection,
Mhm.
providing in terms of like even just being a role model, in a way that they're able to connect with their dad, and the dad is able to connect with his children as well. That's
Mhm.
what that's what I'm hearing you say. That makes sense. So help me with understanding this question. Like, what role then does like being able to communicate this, which you were just talking about, Joseph, plays in how the provider role is then navigated within this relationship with father and son? How do they actually communicate, or maybe not communicate, this need of, I need you to be a different type of provider, not just a financial provider, or even the longing for the father to say, maybe I just don't want to be a financial provider. I want to be a provider that actually provides emotionally and relationally and in other means other than financially for my child or my children. And or both, we see. Does my question make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll let Neil go first because I want to follow the order, I guess.
Oh, okay. I thought she was directing it to you. So, like I said before, somewhat, being a provider, we had to redefine exactly what that means,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and that, of course, is going to come through communication. When we are talking about asking or requesting um, emotional support and things of that nature,
Mm,
unfortunately, to a certain degree, we're also, changing the expectations of our gender roles
yeah.
that we have been taught. Men and boys, before you were kind of taught, don't really show emotions because that's vulnerability or that's weakness. And
Mm,
now you're saying, okay, I want you to feel comfortable coming to me for emotional support. I want to be able to give that to you. I want you to be able to request that of me. So
yeah.
then you're also, you start to think about, okay, so what does it mean for me to be a boy? What does it mean to be a male father
Mm,
in this, you know, in this reality that we're living in now? If we have to somewhat change what that means in terms of how we are seen as being strong people,
mm,
where you can be strong and emotional, where you can be strong and be vulnerable, and where you can be strong and be able to communicate that without fear of somebody, say, taking advantage of you or seeing you in a different manner. So I think this you can start off with the idea or the premise of what it doesn't mean to be a provider, but then it's going to, touch on different aspects of your identity as a man and as a person in a relationship or just within your own family structure.
mm, mm,
Right, right. And also, as being a provider too, also saying that there's many avenues to being a provider, right? And just, looking at it, hey, you can be strong and provide financially, but also provide that emotional support that goes along with the providing financially, right? And helping the child and allowing, you know, having more conversation and allowing one, allowing one to understand, hey, it's okay to talk about these things, and it's okay to say, like I said in our last meeting, that's okay that if you don't know, and right, be willing to explore that with your child, and allowing your child to see you in a space of like whether you're confused or not knowing, but taking that child along the way to figure it out together. Like, let's explore this together, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, I really appreciate what you are saying because then what you two are saying is the importance of not only verbal communication, we also know that we communicate non-verbally, right?
Mhm.
Right? How do you respond to your child who might be hurting, right? Do you just walk away from them when they're crying, or do you move towards them, right? And even in what you're saying, part of that nonverbal communication is also having children, whether they're young, teenager, or even young adults, are watching you. How do you model your own strength around holding emotion and still being strong, being able to say, hey, this hurt or this doesn't feel good, modeling that and modeling how to provide in different ways as well. So I kind of hear like you are saying, like, we can do this in several ways. We can do it explicitly or we can do it implicitly,
Mhm.
and that shows to the people that we're in relationship with that as men we are more than just providing financially. We can also provide and also receive emotional connection and relational connections as well. So thank you both for that reflection. So let's be a bit like Neil, you started talking about this, how like cultural norms, specifically, like if we're focusing on Black and Brown community, how
Mhm.
does it shape this expectation for men to provide?
Wow, how does it? Good question. Um, it's fun because after I after I mentioned that, I started thinking about actually this trend that we seem to be in towards toxic masculinity. Misogyny seems to be on a rise right now. So it's kind of like um, a shift from what I was mentioning before
Mhm.
with, you know, taking it back, taking it back to when, men, for lack of a better way to frame it, were very primitive, primal. Um, so when it comes to, basically it's hard to say. I really don't know. Because I think it depends on the people that you surround yourself with,
Mhm.
and what perhaps may be going on within your particular community. I've
Mhm.
seen um, almost extremes, or maybe not extremes, but I've seen, especially nowadays, people on the opposing sides of, say, misogyny and going along in those veins, and then people that are really trying to get more into, say, being partners with the person that they're with, both financially, emotionally,
Mhm.
um, and I guess like that. So it's hard to say really what any particular, almost any particular culture, any particular group, any
Yeah.
people within any particular neighborhood, how
Mhm.
they may see it. It kind of
Mhm.
depends on what their experiences are and who they surround themselves with.
Yeah, makes
Yeah,
sense.
I think what Neil's saying is kind of true, and I think it varies on different cultures. A lot of factors come into play, um, and just yeah, I think just in retrospect, I think that that really hits the nail right in the head, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And then you got this sense of what it means to being a provider. Each culture has their definition, right? And redefining, and we're being told so many different messages. Like
Mhm.
one culture could talk about being a provider this way, but then when you go out into the real world, it's a different message. And it's like, how do you balance the two? Is there a balance between the
Yeah.
two, or you just have to pick a side, right? And which side is right? And who
Mhm.
defines which side is right,
Right.
right? So there's a whole bunch of factors that plays into that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what you're speaking to is like the importance of knowing yourself, right? And what the two of you are saying is like there's not one culture is monolithic, right? Like not all Black people are this way, or all Asian people are this way, right? Or
Mhm.
all like Latino people are this way, or even white people are this way. And I think if we're focusing on, I wouldn't even call it cultural norms, but like maybe even societal norms, right? And when we, in a society, particularly a society that's so focused on capitalism, like it's capitalistic, money is important. And money as being a financial provider is tied to masculinity in our society in the United States. And so when we think about the ways in which the pressure of whether it is being a person of color, a Black person, Asian person, right? A Latino person. And we can also add class to this, right? The social, like if you're a working class, right? Or even someone who is struggling and poor, right? As a man, society is telling you that you're supposed to be the financial provider. But if we have the effect of racism and classism that's making it difficult for men to provide for their family, how does that then define their own expectation of themselves, right? And then their own cultural expectations, meaning they're like within like their group, right? Like, oh, you're supposed to be this type of man providing for your family, but you're not able to get into the system economically to be able to financially provide for your family, right? And so, how do you then understand yourself and your own expectations of yourself and other people's expectations of you, societal's expectation of you? So,
Mhm. And I think to take it a step further, especially nowadays when you have women earning sometimes more than men, or women achieving more than men, both financially and educationally,
yeah,
then you have the man comparing himself perhaps to his partner or other women around him,
yeah,
and that he further questions himself.
yeah,
And then sometimes it turns up in terms of animosity
yeah,
um, towards the woman.
yeah.
Sometimes it turns up as him not really being comfortable with redefining for himself his own manhood.
Mm-hmm.
Because for him, it could be like, well, I cannot be the man that I was raised to be because I am not financially able to provide.
Right.
But the person I'm with, my partner, may be. So what does that mean for me? Where is my place?
Mm-hmm.
Am I still a man?
Mm-hmm.
And if I am, then how do I show this if I cannot live up to the expectations or the definitions that I was raised with?
Mm-hmm. No, that is great. That is a great point because then I think that's where we start getting all of this societal pressure, right? And who men are supposed to be, how men are supposed to define themselves, then becomes conflict
Mhm, mhm.
for that individual person. And then they don't know how to show up for themselves and they don't know how to show up for those that they're in relationship with, whether it's with their partner or with their children, right? Because you have to like define this role of being a male partner, a male romantic partner, right? Whether it's a husband, a boyfriend, or a partner, and or a father, right? And so that is difficult. And so, how can therapy then help men, fathers, reframe their identity beyond just being a quote unquote provider, in this sense, financial provider?
I think it goes back to our first initial meeting that we had. I think it's just creating that space excuse me, and allowing men to know that it's okay to have these conversations,
Mm,
getting their understanding of what these terms mean to them. How do they want to define it? How do they want it to look, right? And just providing them, with that space of, hey, looking at it from a different lens while still holding on to what you believe, right? Can we add more, right? Or can we kind of modify this term of what it means to be a provider, right? And also, I want to make a comment on what Neil said previously, also that this sense of like also with the women making more, and from my experience with clients I've had is, with the women making more, playing into the idea of, all right, you'll get there, keep working, do this, do that, do this, do that, do this, do that. And it kind of like shifts that mindset of like, I'm not enough. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. How is she telling me what to do? Right. And then you start then questioning, like you said, questioning yourself. Right. And it plays into maybe another topic we could talk about later of what it means to be a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because being a provider, as my experience with men, is not just being a provider, it's also being a leader. And what does that mean? And how do you lead if I'm not providing financially, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
not the sole breadwinner, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I
That's a
think
really
that is actually something come up, I come to, I see come up in my sessions as well,
Mm,
where it's, and I for some reason, recently, this concept of wanting a woman that will submit to
mm,
her man.
mm.
And I'm always like, what do you mean exactly by that? How does that look for you? And
Yeah.
and and what are the expectations that align with that? And are you living up to the expectations that are, necessary for your woman to submit? And, is she living up to whatever those expectations are? And then what does it necessarily mean for the
Mm-hmm.
two of you
Mm-hmm.
when you throw around this term? Do you feel like if your woman submits, is that your definition of being a man, of being a provider? If
Mm-hmm.
she allows you somewhat to, as you said, be that leader and she will
Mm-hmm.
just follow.
Mm-hmm. That's a really, really good point. And I think as a relational therapist that we are, right? We always not only have to think about the individual, we also, if we're working with the family, we're thinking about the family. If we're working with the couple, we're thinking about the couple, right? We're thinking about the individuals and each individual in the family, each individual in the coupleship, we're also thinking about society, right? How like all the stuff that we're talking about is all these societal expectations and pressures and how they show up in the relationship right now. Like, what does it mean to submit, right? Like, where did people understand that concept from? And how is that concept connected and tied to being a man and being a financial provider and being a breadwinner? And I think one of the things that really for us in working with men, fathers, what I'm hearing you say is that there has to be an understanding of how are we working on behalf of our relationship, right? Our relationship to ourselves as men, our relationship to a family member, right? If it's a wife or a partner, our relationship to our children. I remember Ken Hardy used to talk about the importance like of working on behalf of our relationships. And it sounds like that might be a point of like trying to like help, and you all can correct me if I'm wrong, and trying to help men like understand that this word submit, what does it mean? How is it actually moving towards, and how does it show up as working on behalf of your relationship?
yeah. Because I just want to say this, it's interesting that you said that, because in my experience as well, I hear the same thing too, but I hear it from the female side where it's like, I want to submit to my man. I want him to take the lead. I want him to take the role, but he's not doing this, doing this, doing that. He's not
Mm,
fulfilling this, therefore I can't do this.
mhm,
Right. And for him, I hear a lot, it's like, then if I'm not doing this, are you truthfully submitting to me? Right. And then we're gonna take a step back of, like you said, Neil, what does this word submitting mean? What does it mean? Is it whatever I say goes, like, right? Like, how do we define this? Is
Right.
it a toxic way of submitting, or what are we looking at this as, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the way you frame it, it's like it's almost it sounds more like an agreement,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which you would think is, people are even. Like, okay, I will submit, but you have to, have these things up and running before I can allow myself to submit to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it's not just me blindly obeying or just on general principle, you are the man, you are the leader. You have to earn that.
Right.
Mm. You have to earn that. Meaning we have to work together to work on behalf of our relationship.
Right. Right.
Earn it, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay. So it sounds like that's one of the conversations that you all, or maybe several of the conversations that you all have with the Black men that you are working with in therapy.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm, great, great, great. All right. So we have like 3 minutes. Should I go on and ask my 2 questions or should we stop? Stop. Okay. All right, great. All right. Well, thank you both for this insightful focus on our part two on Black or just men's mental health in general, beyond the paycheck, coping with the provider pressure and protecting your mental health. I appreciate your comments, and I also appreciate the work that you are doing with our client at AB Semi Relational Health. As we said last time, this is the type of work that we do here at AB Semi Relational Health, where our focus is really to focus on culturally affirming therapy for Black people, people of color, and also any other persons and people are welcome here. So thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you for
us.
having us.
Looking forward to part 3.